Okay, perfect. All right, so yesterday we spent some time on containment. Again, I see we don't have as many people as usual. I think there's an issue with your schedule and my schedule. I mean, I think it's, what do you guys know what you were supposed to have this period, second period? Is like independent reading or something?
Last week it would say independent reading, but I think this week it says social studies second period.
All right, so some people maybe just didn't get the update to the schedule. So every Tuesday and Thursday I see you second. Every Monday and Thursday I see you sixth. So that's pretty consistent. And then every Friday I see you guys. Let me just clarify. I see you fourth period. All right, so just I'll try and make that more obvious, but I think some people just are missing out on that. But that's okay. I think people will roll in, and plus it's going to be on YouTube. So let's just get started. So yesterday we talked about containment at length. We saw what containment was. We looked at the Truman Doctrine. We looked at the Marshall Plan. We looked at the Eisenhower Doctrine. Hold on, we have an announcement. 1 second. Okay, so let's look at how containment now becomes an issue out in the country of Korea. So for those that don't remember, yesterday we also talked about how while we were trying to contain communism, the Soviet Union was trying to place an iron curtain, they called it. Not they called it, but people called it the Iron Curtain, over Asia and Europe. So Korea was a country that happened to be half communist and half democratic, okay, or half dictatorship, okay, and half democratic. But basically there are two very differences, all right? North Korea, okay, and South Korea were separated something called the 38th parallel. That is a line of latitude, and that line of latitude is going to separate these two countries. And I want you to think of like almost like how New York would be separated. It's a lot of the same type of people, obviously, because it's the same country. And if you were to separate our state, or if you were to separate our country, okay, you would still have a lot of people that knew each other and stuff. So a lot of people from North Korea did know people from South Korea. Once World War II ended, North Korea and South Korea separated into two separate countries. So I should rephrase that. The country of Korea separated into two separate countries, North Korea and South Korea, okay? North Korea is a dictatorship and a communist country, so very, very similar looking to the Soviet Union. South Korea is democratic and capitalist. It actually is really a republic like the United States, so very similar looking to us. All right, so think back to containment, okay? If North Korea is gonna stay communist, containment is what? Are we going to mess with North Korea if they just wanna be communist? Is that an issue for us? According to containment, is North Korea being communist a problem for us? Oh, did Mr. Panio stump 8D1? Yes, no, yes? All right, so let me clarify. Since North Korea is communist and they're already communist, that is not a problem for us. All right, if a country is already communist, remember the goal of containment was to stop the spread of communism. So if North Korea is already communist, that's really no issue for us. The issue for us is when North Korea decides to do this. In 1950, North Korea decides to invade South Korea, okay? And their goal is they want to take full control of Korea and make Korea fully communist. Now that rings a bell for us. Now that's a problem, because according to our foreign policy of containment, we don't want that to happen. We don't want South Korea, who is in a capitalist country, to now fall under communism. Why kids sometimes get confused with this is they don't realize North Korea and South Korea are two separate countries. They see Korea and they think of it like North Dakota and South Dakota. Well, it's all part of the United States, or North Carolina and South Carolina. Okay, no, they are two separate countries. They think completely differently. Okay, they are under two separate governments with two separate leaders. Okay, so South Korea, when they get invaded, really get their butts kicked early on. All right, and according to our foreign policy, the Marshall Plan, the Truman Doctrine, containment, okay, the United Nations and the United States had to intervene and protect South Korea. Okay, now I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. All right. But you remember who in our government is responsible for declaring war? Who has the power? Our executive, legislative, or judicial branch? Who has that power in our government? Congress, legislative. Okay, very good. Legislative branch has the power to declare war. And when we taught back in Unit 1 about government, we saw that Congress has the power to declare war. I kind of mentioned to you very just subtly, like, yes, that is true. Congress to declare war, but I should have said something along the lines of, I'm also kind of lying to you. Legislative branch does have the power to declare war, but after 1945, we can go to war in other ways. And the other ways that we can go to war is through the United Nations. Okay, so we can actually use the United Nations as a way, not necessarily to declare war, but we can still go to war. So the United Nations, for those who don't remember, they have a Security Council, and their responsibility is building up a military, I forget the word right now, a bunch of different militaries from around the world to help fight against, okay, a situation like this, okay? So the United Nations is the way we find ourselves in another war, because we go to them, okay? So we will talk more about this after you do the reading. So yes, or the 5 permanent members have to agree. And then you also can send troops, though they're not troops, through NATO. It gets a little bit complicated, it gets a little bit dicey. You don't have to really know all the different details. What you do need to know is that we don't have to go to Congress to declare war anymore. And that has its pros and cons, but that's dangerous. You're gonna see a lot of the wars that we get into after World War II are like these smaller, okay, wars, but they get very intense very quickly because of the weapons and stuff. So we'll talk more about this later, but this is the first time this kind of happens. So we're gonna do something a little bit differently. I would like to stop the notes right now. I would like for you to work on your own, okay, on the Korean War reading, okay? I'm gonna give you, look at the clock here, I'm gonna give you 15 total minutes to do it, okay? You're gonna learn about the leaders, you're gonna learn about some of the details of the war. This is only one day we spend on this war, okay? It's one of those things, I could definitely spend a lot more time, but we don't really have the time to do it. All right, so take your time, go through this reading. After you take 5 minutes and go through the reading, you have some Korean War questions here, 5 questions that you need to answer, okay? We will come back together at 9:40, okay? We'll come back together at 9:40, as I spelled opinion wrong. Great job, Mr. Pania. And then we'll kind of go over these a little bit, okay? So make sure these are done as much as you can, and we'll go over these questions. Let me know if you need me for now. I just saw a couple people pop in. We took a break from the notes. We're going to the assignment for today. You guys have a reading on the Korean War. You're working on the questions that I posted. 5 questions based off of the reading, very basic stuff. Try and have this done by 9:40. If you don't, it's okay. Okay, but try and have it done by 9:40. Okay, guys, about 5 minutes left. I got about 3 minutes left. Get ready. I'm going to need 5 volunteers to answer these 5 questions. So you ready to go? 3 minutes left. Okay, guys. So let's do this the old-fashioned way, like we're in person here. So you guys have the raise hand button. Any volunteers for number 1? Why did North Korea have more success early on in the Korean War? Ooh, got some big hand raises. First one I see is Josh. Josh, go ahead. Josh says you could unmute yourself and talk, but that's fine. The North Korean soldiers were a stronger army, better equipped, and were trained for a while. Okay, yes, that is correct for number 1. They just had a better military, a little bit more prepared. They were trained by the Soviets, so they were ready to go and had a little bit of the element of surprise. So let me work between the two here. So if we go back to this right now, not that, sorry. If we go back to this PowerPoint, all right, obviously this is how North and South Korea look. This middle line here is known as the 38th parallel, okay, between the two countries. In 1950, okay, just take a look at this map here. You have the yellow, which is basically North Korea and the communist forces. And then in the green, you have the area occupied by South Korea, the United States, and the UN forces. So in 1950, like when I say they pretty much won the war within the first few months, they did, okay? But at the end of 1950, some things start to happen. So let's take a look at number 2. Raise your hand for number 2. How is the Harry Truman able to send troops to fight in Korea without consulting Congress? Okay, I see Gentiana first for this one. Go ahead. He was able to send troops to fight in Korea without consulting Congress because he was able to do it through the United Nations. I do think this goes against checks and balances. Okay. Gentiana, would you like to unmute yourself and tell me why you think it goes against checks and balances?
Well, from my memory, the president doesn't have the power to, or does he?
No, you're right. He doesn't.
Yeah, he doesn't have it.
According to the Constitution. Go ahead.
So in this way, he was kind of finding like a loophole to do what he wanted and not actually like ask Congress and go through the whole process.
Okay. I think that's a very good use of your word loophole there. Very good. Or tell me what you think the opposite, because both can be true. So there's multiple perspectives. What's your opinion?
I say that this does not go against checks and balances because the UN, they passed a proposal saying that they will restore the peace in South Korea, meaning they will mobilize the troops. And so how I see it is that they're not really going into war, they're just providing soldiers, they're not declaring war. So I feel like this does not go against checks and balances.
Excellent. Both of you guys make excellent points. Very nicely said. All right, number 3. Okay, so let's now go back to the map. Sorry, 1 second. I get you raise your hand for 3 in a second. Ashraf, you could do that one. 1951. Give me 1 second, Ashraf. 1951. So look what happens. Now the UN gets involved. And now we go from South Korea and we push them all the way back past the 38th parallel. And we end up so close to taking over North Korea. And not only North Korea may no longer be communist. Here is the problem. China, who is a communist country, gets a little bit nosy. Okay? They get a little bit nosy. So now there's this opportunity in this war where a very fateful decision happens. Okay? Basically, General Douglas MacArthur, one of the leaders of the Korean War, says we should invade into China because they're communists too. Now that's not containment. That's not containment. Okay? So Harry Truman completely goes against this. So you have a disagreement between the general and the president. So let's take a look at this next question. Ashraf, go ahead. Ashraf? Perfect. Okay. Truman and the UN only wanted Douglas to fight a limited war. Excellent. So they didn't want to fight a whole World War III sort of thing. Yes. And basically what ends up happening, they have a huge disagreement. And this is the big mistake. You could disagree with the president. That's no problem. MacArthur went on to like the newspapers and to the radios and started publicly speaking out against his boss. And that is a good recipe to get fired. If I go on social media and I just start ripping Mr. Martinez, I'm not going to be working here very long. Okay, so that can't happen. All right, let me just make sure the next one here. Let's stop it. Let's wait with number 4 for a second. So when you go back to here, okay, in 1952, what happens is China gets involved a little bit. They're saying you're getting too close to our border, so we're going to push the UN back, and they do. And then basically by 1953, the war ends. It's a 4-year war. I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm not kidding. Like where the war started in 1950, look at this. This is North Korea in orange, South Korea in green. Where it starts in 1950, it ends in 1953. Like nothing really changes. They move the line a little bit. They make this kind of more crooked line called the armistice line or the DMZ line, but that's it. All right, so this was a very important war, okay, but like not one that goes down in history of being like an extremely impactful one because the war doesn't really change anything. Okay, it's kind of like the War of 1812 in that respect. Who would like to answer number 4 before we go back to the notes? I see Maheen. Go ahead, Maheen. Why was this called the Forgotten War? Okay, there's a ton of Americans that are still missing. That is what the reading says. Very good. We should also mention that it's sometimes known as the Forgotten War because it happens after World War II, but before the Vietnam War, and it's kind of caught between the two. And a lot of people forget about this war and its intensity. And if you ever go to Washington, D.C., they have a memorial called the Forgotten Soldiers of the Korean War. It's a very good memorial. Last one here, number 5. Just write in the chat for this one. In your opinion, was the Korean War needed for containment, or was this what we could have done without? Why or why not? Just give me a yes or a no. Yes, you believe it was needed for containment, or no, it was maybe something we could have done without. I'm just curious to see what you guys say. Okay, yes. Got one yes. Come on, I got 32 students here. Another yes. Okay. Interesting. All right. So it did succeed in its goals. North Korea and South Korea did not become fully communist. I don't usually like giving my opinion, but Abigail, I will for you. Yeah, it pretty much, it does its goal of containment. So I would say its intended goal came out to be correct. So I'd say, yes, that's good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take those details from the reading and just kind of put them into our notes so we have them. I'll give you a minute to do this. this is a lot of stuff that we've already discussed and talked about, but this is now just an easy way for you to go back to your notes. So we could talk about the very oversimplified version of the Korean War. I hate rushing through wars. I feel like I'm not doing the service, you guys a service of really going into the details of it, but this is not a major topic on the Korean, on the region. So we just got to spend one day on it. No, nothing new yet, Mohammed. Here's the thing, honestly, let me be honest. I hope you guys don't have to take the Regents, because that is like the best possible situation. You guys all will get the 11th grade credit pending you pass my class and pass my final. But like, that would be such a great situation. Honestly, let's honestly hope for that, because that's like a once in a lifetime thing. It happened last year, you know, and all the kids basically that passed the class got the Regents credit. So let's hope that happens. But we got to prepare like it is. Yeah, me too. I want you guys to move on and go to bigger and better things in high school. And if you could get a Regents credit, that would be unbelievable. But we got to prepare like the test is still coming. All right. So like we talked about, Congress never officially declares war on North Korea. This is the first of many wars from 1945 to 2021, where we don't declare war. There's going to be most of the wars, actually pretty much all of the wars, there's going to be no like declaration of war. Even the Vietnam, which is a crazy war, we don't declare war. It's almost like we don't want to show that we're fully committing to a war, because if we fully commit to a war, we have our atomic bombs, we have like all of our soldiers, and we don't want that to happen. So I almost want to like give the public thought that we're just kind of, oh yeah, we're fighting, but you know, we're not taking it too seriously, which is a weird thing. But we don't want to make it seem like we're taking it too seriously, because if we take it really seriously, that's going to mean like big catastrophe. All right. Number two, in the Korean War, former World War II General Douglas MacArthur gets fired. This is probably our biggest Regents detail. It's a great example to show that the president runs the military. It's a great way to show that he's the commander-in-chief, not the general. And the general can be unhappy, but I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of discussions in the White House, even if you see a lot of TV shows. The second the president makes the decision, that is it. Okay? You have the generals, the military has to go along with it. It has to be one voice sort of thing. And MacArthur was not doing it. He felt like he knew better than Truman. Maybe he did. He's a general. Maybe he did. But that's not how our country works. You have to listen to the president, because the president gets elected by the people. Guys, we don't elect the generals. So we don't want a general to become too powerful, and because that's the guy we didn't elect. Okay, we want the people we elect to make these big decisions, which hopefully makes sense. The Korean War never officially ends with a treaty. It ends with an armistice or a ceasefire from 1953. Now, when I first started teaching this Regents class, I would say it still exists today. So the 38th parallel line, or the DMZ line, is considered a war zone up until 2018. In 2018, North and South Korea finally came to an agreement to officially end the Korean War. I mean, obviously, the United States had a little bit of a part of it as well, because we were a part of the war too. But that officially ended the war between North Korea and South Korea, almost 50 years later. When my brother was in the military, he was stationed over in Okinawa, Japan. One of his responsibilities over in Japan was not keeping an eye on North Korea, but because we were still technically in a ceasefire and not a treaty, we had to have troops stationed over there just in case war broke out in Korea. So I remember my family always having a close eye on what was going on in Korea, and thank God nothing ever happened. My brother never had to go fight over there, but he would be stationed over in that Pacific coast for that reason. If it's in Washington, D.C., Liz Mel, I've been to it. The only big thing I haven't been to in Washington, D.C., which I want to get to, is the new African History Museum. which is like impossible to get into. Like the 2 times I've been to Washington, D.C. over the last 4 years where it's been there, that's awesome in D.C. because I could not get tickets. There was a line. We tried to go out the door for like 3 hours, and I was just like, I can't. I can't. There's too many other things to see at this point. So hopefully I'll get there, but I've been to a lot, so I can't tell you of one I haven't been to. All right. I want to rush through these reader questions. If you could just hang with me an extra minute or two. Don't write this down. Though America and the United Nations did not lose many soldiers compared to other countries, we spent a ton of money. We had the money to do it at the time. You know, the resources to help me out. And just a side note, Nisi, if you have any pictures, if you want to email me some pictures, I haven't seen the museum on the inside. So if you have any pictures from it and you would like to share, please email me. All right, if you could post the notes from the other side for Gentiana, that would be awesome too. Okay, so again, North Korea today is still one of our biggest enemies. I think this is a very telling picture that came out in 2017. So there was a satellite photo that they took of North Korea and South Korea. And basically, if you look here, this is a picture of what North Korea looks like. And if you look at their country, which is authoritative and communist, you get a kind of honest picture of what it looks like from the satellite. So in this area here, if you could follow my mouth, North Korea, okay, is like, there's no lights on. There's like nothing going on basically in this country. But where their government is in Pyongyang, okay, where their dictatorship is, everything looks good. All right, so this is kind of, unfortunately, sometimes how a communist country looks, at least from outer space. South Korea, which is capitalist and democratic in 2017 still, you can see the differences between the two nations. Now, I'm not saying which country is better to live in, but from the satellite images, you can see a very differing picture between the two sides. All right, and this is why capitalism and communism have a huge gripe with each other. Okay, last 2 questions, 2 questions for today, then we're out of here. Top question is a little tough. Bottom question should be a little easier. So during the Korean War, President Harry Truman removed General MacArthur from command because Arthur did what? No, definitely not 2. He was fine. MacArthur was fine fighting. That wasn't his issue. He wanted to expand the fighting. I got 4 with a question mark. Possibly. Maybe. It's a tough one. I got a 1. Got a 4, got a 4. All right, yes. Tough question. 4 is the correct answer. Okay. Hold on.
Any teachers that are interested in doing information about growth in universities, maybe USC centers that 10:30.
Sorry, guys.
Teachers that would like to get information about growth in universities, you can stop by the teachers center at 10:30. Thank you.
Okay. So yes. We elect the president, the electoral college, we vote. So that's civilian control. The people control the military through the guidance of the president. So we don't want the generals going out there making things happen. Okay, what about this last one here? You don't know the Vietnam War and Persian Gulf War yet, but you will know this answer. Okay, correct answer for 2. Also 4. I'm sorry I held you guys late. Okay, I will see you guys tomorrow, all 4th period. Great job today.